The Monster Jam Stadium Championship Series kicked off in Houston, Texas with two insane Monster Jam events. We recap the current Series Championship Series point standings as well as all the incredible action that happened over the weekend. This is the Monster Jam Teardown. Welcome, Monster Jam fans, to another episode of the Monster Jam Teardown. I'm your host, Joshua Lee, and joining me is our team of analysts. We have Danny McGinley, Joshua Tavares, and filling in for Wayne Chiaki is Josh Gajewski. And guys, we have so much to talk about from the first weekend of action in Houston that I'm just going to get right into it. But first of all, we do need to cover the one quick piece of news we have, and that is Monster Jam announcing 4 events at Atlanta Motor Speedway in Atlanta, Georgia, April 24th and 25th. And this isn't just some normal Monster Jam Stadium Championship Series event. This is at a major NASCAR circuit, which, to recent memory, Monster Jam has not been to a major NASCAR racetrack in so many years, maybe even ever. And they're going to be in the infield at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Supercross will be there before them. Then they're going to tear it down and put it up for Monster Jam. But guys, what are you expecting from this very unique event? Because they are going to be right in the infield. It's a little smaller than normal stadiums. We could see some unique track styles happen there at the Speedway.
For sure, it's going to be very unique and very different for, not only the drivers, but also for the fans, because it's a very different, experience to be going to a, per se, NASCAR speedway for any kind of event, really, even whether it's Supercross or NASCAR. It's a cool experience. It's a very different feel for seating. So now that Monster Jam's going to Atlanta Motor Speedway is going to be very different. It's going to be very cool. I can't wait to see what they can do with the track setup and overall in performance.
Yeah, I definitely think it's extremely unique that they are going to a venue like this. I mean, we've seen speedway shows before, Hagerstown, West Lebanon. Those have been along for, longer than most of us have been, born and everything. So, it's definitely really cool to see, and especially they're going to be using the infield, which, it's almost going to be like a small version of a stadium track. So I definitely think that, it's something to really look forward to in April.
Oh man, I'm excited to see what's going on. That layout is so different in a sense to what they're used to. I think they're going to take a lot of track inspiration, possibly from international, in my opinion. So I think that'd be kind of cool to incorporate over here. But yeah, I think it's just overall going to be a great event, and it's just awesome to see new venues coming to Monster Jam.
Pre-sale starts for those events on February 9th for April 24th and 25th. 4 awesome events, no pit party, just the events happening down on the track. So make sure you get your tickets starting on February 9th. Now it's time to get into the lot of news that we have coming out of the first 2 events in Houston. But first, it's the review of the Stadium Championship Series points. And as of right now, Tom Meents, Max D. Fire taking over from where he left off in Arlington. He grabbed both overall event championships, currently has a score of 62 points, and he leads 5 points over Adam Anderson in Megalodon. 11 points behind Tom Meents and Max D. Fire is Bryce Kenny in the Great Clips Mohawk Warrior, with Jamie Garner in Overboard and Bari Musauer in Zombie, 17 points behind the leader, rounding out your top 5. So a bit of an interesting start to the series championship. Jamie Garner is up there. We're going to go a bit more in depth with a lot of the storylines, but right now, just taking a look at the points, what's your initial thoughts looking at the points coming out of the first 2 events in Houston? Because these early points can really set the tone for the series, and right now it looks like Tom's trying to set the tone of, I'm here to win, I'm here to dominate, and so far he's doing that.
Yeah, Tom here is taking charge. Tom was leaving off not only with, the 2 overall wins that he had in Arlington, but picking up 2 more here in Houston. That shows how, the experience that Tom has in the past comes into play here. Not only winning in 2019, the Stadium Championship Series there. Tom has been very consistent nonetheless. Adam is not too far up behind him. So it's going to be a very close points tour here. And I can't wait to see how the competition unfolds. Points are so stacked here. Jamie's in 4th, and to be honest with you, I didn't expect Jamie to, pop up on the map like he did. We're going to go into, depth with that later. But, shaping up with the points here is going to be a very unique season, and I can't wait to see how everything comes around.
Yeah, I definitely think something to really note is that Tom Meents is undefeated in the events that he's competed at in overall event championships. He has 4 in a row now, which, I mean, to my knowledge, and at least in stadiums, I don't think that's really ever happened. Like something as like something like that where he's winning that much. So that alone just shows that the long break that we had between March and October really did not affect Tom. And again, like Josh said, that there's a lot of different names up in the top 5. Obviously, it's only the first weekend, and anything could change right off the bat. But yeah, it's definitely super impressive that Meents was able to win those 2 overall event championships.
Like I said last week, Tom Meents is the man to beat on the tour, and he is showing it right now why he is staying pretty consistent overall. And like they said, a lot of different names up in the top of the points that you might not have expected right now, but they're there, and we're gonna get into those in a little bit later. But yeah, overall, great start to the season.
We're moving into the recap of the Monster Energy racing competition for the entire weekend. A bit of a large spread in terms of the racing records. Adam Anderson and Megalodon absolutely dominating the Monster Energy Monster Jam racing competition, though. 7-0 behind the wheel of Megalodon. Close behind, Tom Meents, Max D. Fire. He versed him in both of the racing finals. He's 4-2. Close behind, Jamie Garner and Overboard with a great racing weekend, 3-2. Bari Musauer, 2-2. He got 2 buys into round number 2, both events. 2-1, Ryan Anderson and Bakugan Dragonoid. We'll get to why he's 2-1 a little bit later on. But some great racing records from drivers that we didn't necessarily expect to have some good racing records. And starting with Adam Anderson, I mean, we talked about him after Arlington that he almost was in a funk behind the wheel of Megalodon. Then he goes into Salt Lake City. Seems like first half of the weekend he's still in that funk. But that's those 2 Sunday events. He found his groove behind the wheel of Megalodon. He started dominating racing. He started dominating the donut competition. He started winning overall event championships. And right now, he is the fastest on that Houston track behind the wheel of Megalodon. Just overall, an awesome weekend for Adam Anderson to get that start that he needed behind the wheel of a brand new truck for a stadium championship series.
Yeah, I said this from the get-go. Adam, he's one of those drivers that it takes time for him to get accustomed to something like that. And a change where he has to completely change chassis. Gravedigger 35, which is his chassis for Gravedigger. He's very used to. He's driven that for the past 3 years or so. So Adam, in that case, he wasn't used to the whole change and setup for him. So he has to change the shocks, dial them in, and then get used to the seat. Get used to the view of the truck and seeing out of it. So that's just a whole change and adjustment right there in itself. So he had 2 stadium events to do that in Arlington. He did pretty well. Didn't show out the best, to his performance. Coming into Salt Lake, he had a lot of momentum coming out in the last 2 events. He didn't really have a hot start at the beginning, but that's, again, a whole different, change in floor setup. So, that's obviously going to be, a problem in itself. But Adam's quick to adjust, like I've said. So, Adam's going to be one to look out for. He's been very fast, in Houston. So hopefully he can carry that momentum into the racing competitions.
Yeah, Adam really impressed me all weekend, especially in racing, getting the 2 wins. And I think that I kind of had a good feeling that he was going to do really well in racing. He's always very fast in racing regardless, even since, when he first started driving back in 2005 or 2006. And, he was just, like, when you were watching racing, like, you would always see Adam in, whatever lane he was in. He was always just flying down, the straightaway right before the final turn and, just taking everyone out just in every single race. And I think that, him getting those 2 competition wins, and especially for the fact that there's still 5 more events in Houston, I think that really gives Adam an edge there, at least in points, because, he understands the Houston dirt here.
Adam was one of the guys this weekend that was able to actually overcome some of that Houston dirt that came up to bite a little bit of people this weekend. And he had some of the fastest racing passes every pass that he went out onto the track, no matter where, when he was going. So, he's on a tear so far in racing, and luckily for him, to my knowledge, they may have the same racing style heading into this weekend, so that could play in his favor, and we could see another tear going on with Adam racing, but we get into that a little bit later.
I want to stay on this topic of Adam Anderson in the racing competition, because I want to throw something out there and see how you guys feel about it, because we saw Adam Anderson really come alive in racing back at Monster Jam World Finals. You know, he was back-to-back World Finals racing champion 2013 and 2014. Then he went back and won it again in 2018. And the Vegas track at Sam Boyd Stadium was, you know, long straightaway, hard braking into a tight turn and across the line. Then he gets onto the 2019 tours, which was the first year where St. Louis style racing was used across all the tours. And we saw another resurgence of Adam Anderson in the racing competition. Then in 2020, he gets put on the Red Tour, the Red Stadium Championship Series, which is a St. Louis style course, long straightaways, tight corners. Adam starts to dominate racing a little bit again. And now we're seeing him back in Megalodon, St. Louis style racing, dominating again in the racing competition. Is this style track suited to Adam really well? Because it seems like whenever we have, you know, that long straightaway into a tight corner, like St. Louis style, like Vegas style, like East Rutherford style, he just seems to really come alive in the racing competition and get those wins. Do you think it's just him being really used to the course and loving the course more than it is really his chassis or the dirt?
You know, I think the success that Adam has had in the past at World Finals racing, you know, it pretty much shows that, you know, he's pretty much accustomed to any style of racing you put him through. And, you know, the J-Hook style racing with, you know, St. Louis style racing kind of goes hand in hand. You know, you have an extra turn in the racing for St. Louis, but, you know, you still got that long straightaway and that hairpin turn in the end. So right there, that's a, you know, a challenge in itself. And not a lot of drivers can really pull it off like Adam can. You know, you've seen races where drivers look ahead and Adam's far behind, but Adam will come back in the corner and lay down the pedal and, you know, take it across the finish line. So Adam, you know, he's very competitive, very fast, and it shows in Houston. So maybe we'll see another resurgence of Adam taking home 2 more racing wins here this weekend.
Yeah, I think one thing that, you know, we all have to think about is that Adam has been around for a long time. You know, he's been around for just about, you know, as long as, you know, as anyone else in the tour in itself. And, you know, he's been racing since, like I said, in the last conversation, he's been racing since, you know, 2005, 2006. And, you know, I feel like at this point he's almost like used to these tracks. He's been to Vegas multiple times. He's always done very well in racing. And I think that, you know, like we were saying, like the straightaways and everything, I think he has that nailed down at this point where that, you know, he might really be for the rest of the season the man to beat in racing, especially if we get the same style track for, you know, the remainder of the season. So, you know, I think, you know, he's always fast on regardless of what racing style, but if it ends up being the same St. Louis style that we saw last weekend, I think, you know, everyone in the lineup really has to watch Adam in racing.
I think it comes down to his years of consistency on the track, you know, and Monster Jam also keeping roughly the same style of a racing track for as long as I can remember. There's always been some sort of form of St. Louis style in a sense, whether that's Jersey style or the J-Hook racing that with extra turn or something to that matter. It's just something he's comfortable with that he's been driving on for a long time. And yeah, he's had his problems in what seemed like in Megalodon at the start, but he got on a track that he's comfortable with. And I think Adam, once you get him in a comfortability spot, he's so tough to beat.
And the other storyline we want to cover from the Monster Energy Monster Jam racing competition is the fact that Jamie Garner really coming alive in the racing competition. And we previewed it last week on the show where we talked about Jamie Garner being dominant in racing really early on in the championship series. He didn't get any wins this weekend, but no different. He is still showing that he is strong. And at the same time, a driver that was strong in racing last year and has consistently been strong in racing, he's a World Finals racing champion, Todd LeDuc, went 0-3 because he got a chance to come back after losing against Ryan Anderson in Bakugan Dragonoid and flipped in the same corner that he flipped in the race before with Ryan Anderson. So he's really down bad right now, 0-3. Jamie Garner is up. Looking at his racing record, he currently sits at a 3-2, which is an amazing record. So 2 drivers kind of flip-flopping right now on the tour.
Jamie, you know, he's been, you know, very, you know, in the eyes of a fan, I would say, you know, he's been very shineful. I can't really think of a word to really, you know, put on Jamie because he's been so, consistent in the last couple of events that you've been putting him through. Jamie's just been showing up and putting down, the best laps that I've seen him do, the best times, the coolest two-wheel skill maneuvers that I've seen him do. He's picking up two-wheel skills, rather quickly, and his freestyles has always been very good. So, I mean, Jamie is looking at a great season ahead of him. He can just keep that consistency. And, I know Cole keep backing up behind them is going to be a great duo right there in itself. We just got to see what Jamie can pull out. And, Todd, on the other hand, for racing, obviously is not in his favor. As for other competitions, Todd has been very, iffy, but Todd's been consistent and enough to where he can get enough points. I just feel like those tires that he has on his Monster Energy now has been very, hard for him because he had to transition from the Gen 1-2 BKTs that are rather, fatter in a sense to a, thinner tire tread.
Yeah, I think, Jamie was super impressive just across the board in Houston. And, his racing game, he's always been very solid in racing, especially back in 2020. I remember him, I feel like I want to say he's gone to a couple championship races and he won in Anaheim last year. And, and with Todd, it's, honestly, it was very surprising. But at the same time, look at, with how great of a lineup there is, it was almost expected that one of the big names in the lineup were going to fall to, the other big names in the lineup. And I think that, obviously it's just very surprising that, well, maybe not surprising, but it's definitely different to see that Jamie's doing a lot better than Todd, at least after the first two events. But, we have a long season at this point and, honestly, anything can happen this weekend alone in Houston. So we'll see.
Jamie started off killing it, and he ran into some tough opponents and was able to come out on top. And like I said last week, Jamie is pretty solid so far this year in racing. Last year in racing, and is just continuing into this year. And Todd could have been fighting that track problem I was talking about earlier, where he just couldn't get a comfortable setup just coming out of those arenas. So, that could have been the thing that was messing with Todd. We don't know. But Todd, unfortunately, not having a good week in racing. But he's Todd the Duke. Can't cut him out no matter when you're racing him. So I think he's definitely going to be able to bounce back coming into this weekend.
I was about to say, Todd LeDuc might not have had the best weekend one, but we know Todd LeDuc can come back in weekend 2, 3, 4. And I expect him to be up there in the running for the series championship come the next couple of weeks. But we move on to the Great Clips Skills Challenge. And at the top of that average score leaderboard is Ryan Anderson in Bakugan Dragonoid. I don't think anybody's really shocked to see that with a 9.070. Ryan Anderson is on top right now in Bakugan. We maybe kind of discounted Ryan a little bit with that new Bakugan Dragonoid setup and chassis under him, but he still seems to be pulling off those same moves that he did in his other trucks, Son of a Digger, that he is going to be back in hopefully later on in this season past the Stadium Championship Series. But with Ryan being so dominant, he's pulling off those same moves, the bicycle to moonwalk. He tried to get it into sidewalls at one point. Ryan Anderson was dominant in skills. He's definitely not slowing down now in 2021.
Yeah, Ryan, and this can be said for any other Anderson. Regardless of what truck you put him in, they're going to be dominant. And as I said here, Ryan, he's been very consistent in the two-wheel skills competition and Bakugan Dragonoid. He's picked up, I believe, 2 wins so far in the two-wheel skills competition. So that alone is, impressive because he's not used to that chassis. For one, it's a whole completely different chassis. Obviously it's a CRD chassis that his Son of a Digger truck is, but his Son of a Digger truck is set up completely different than Bakugan Dragonoid. It sits higher, and so he's got to completely switch up. Get a different sense in ride height there, so that's a challenge in itself. Find the lean points of the truck to get it to balance on the the 1 or 2 tires that he has on the front to get into that situation. So Ryan, you're an awesome driver. You can pull up moves like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think when we were talking, last week about Ryan Anderson, and we were saying how, we weren't sure what he was going to do. We were also basing this off of Arlington, and honestly, where Ryan didn't have the greatest weekend. He grabbed I want to say he grabbed the skills win and the freestyle win, but, he wasn't, when you think of Arlington, you weren't thinking of what Ryan did, you were thinking of other names. But, in the skills competition in Houston, it was as if he was right back in a Son of a Digger monster truck. And because, I honestly wasn't expecting him to go for the sidewalls like he usually does because, he's in a completely different truck. That's something that, you really need to have a good setup to control that. But regardless, he ended up saving the sidewalls. He did the bicycle and moonwalk, and I think that, in his skills, I think that really helped him in points. I don't know off the top of my head where he stands in points, but, I think going down the line, if he can keep that score up, I think that'll really help him.
Ryan did awesome. And I think a talking point is that in show one where he won the competition by well over a point, and I don't think we've seen that in like ever. It was just wild to see. He had probably one of the most perfect two-wheel skill maneuvers I've seen in a long time, and I just thought that was awesome. And I think pushing forward, if he can continue his luck with how the two-wheel skills are going so far, I think he's going to be pretty unstoppable in that competition.
Now I want to transition over to our current points leader, Tom Meents and Max D Fire, because he also walked away with a Great Clip Skills Challenge win in Houston, pulling off the maximum moonwalk that he is now so signature for, backing it up onto the Monster Energy backflip ramp and then walking a moonwalk off of it. And that other competition, the Skills Challenge, was the competition that he was the most consistent in, along with Monster Energy and Monster Jam Racing, where you got the same second place in racing both events. And in the Skills Challenge, he was first in event 2, and he only dropped down to 5th in event 1, and he still has one of the best Skills Challenge averages out of the weekend. But he didn't really perform that much in freestyle. And we'll get the freestyle on in a bit, but I want to stay on the topic of Tom Meents right now, because we've seen the domination from him in the Skills Challenge. Clearly is a dominant threat now in the racing competition. Is being consistent in these two events going to be enough for Tom to run away with the points championship, or does he need to make sure that he's getting wins in freestyle as well? We know Tom can. It's not a thing of can Tom win in freestyle. It's a matter of does he need it?
I don't think it's going to really affect Tom as much. His game plan really, in my opinion now is to really just go into the events, have some consistent clean passes, do the, maximum moonwalk, because in all reality, no other driver can really pull it off better than Tom can. And, with the chassis setup that he has, he can only really pull it off with that specific setup. So why not, so why switch something when you have a winning recipe right there? So Tom right there alone has skills in the bag, in my opinion. So that's a challenge that he doesn't really need to worry about. He just got to worry about getting through the rounds, getting far in the round so you can collect points. And then with freestyle, just, stay enough to the top of the pack to where you're consistent, because, other drivers can flop and other drivers can carry. So it's going to be a very, very, iffy, points championship right there for the freestyle competition.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if, Tom Meents can, do as well as he did in racing last weekend and keep that going, the same thing with skills, and, at least stay within, the top 5 in freestyle, relatively consistent, I think he's got a really good shot at this tour, just because, I feel like you have to just be consistent, because honestly, he only had one win over the weekend, and he had 2 overalls, like 1 competition win and 2 overalls. So that just shows how consistent he was just across the board. And I think that, that just shows right with this tour in general that it doesn't matter how much you win, doesn't matter how much, how many competitions you win, you just have to stay up top on the board consistently. And I think, if he keeps doing what he's doing, what he did in Houston last weekend, does it this weekend, the weekend after that, I think he's got a really good shot here.
No, like I said, Tom Meents is the man to beat, and unfortunate for these other competitors, I think we have a different Tom Meents than we have in the past, and I'm going to elaborate a little bit. I think we have a Tom Meents where he has all the championships that he has all the accolades. He's been driving for so long. He has nothing left to prove to the sport. He's out there having fun doing what he loves, and unfortunately for the other drivers, I think that is going to be something that nobody can compete with. And I think Tom Meents is going to end up running away with this as long as his truck stays together. And I think it shows this week that his truck stayed together. He did the stuff he wanted to do, and then some, and he stayed consistent. And I think that's going to be the key this season.
Great point from Josh there. Tom isn't here to make a name for himself. He's here to take names in this championship series. It's going to be exciting to watch Tom continue on, and we're going to continue on with the skills challenge. One final storyline from this. It was the arena athletes that were transitioning over to the stadium championship series, having a little bit of struggle when it came to the skills challenge, specifically Lindsay Reed, Kristen Anderson. They're both towards the bottom of the skills challenge averages. Lindsay Reed having an average of a 6.663, Kristen Anderson having an average of a 5.333, and it was just, we're used to seeing arena athletes coming over, and the one competition they can really lean on to be dominant is the skills challenge, and we didn't see that from Kristen and Lindsay. Do you guys think that's for any specific reason, or do you think it's just getting used to being in a stadium setting and competing against stadium athletes and feeling that pressure of a stadium?
I most definitely, think it is definitely the transition of, going from an arena to a stadium, more so for Lindsay than Kristen, because Kristen has had some, experience in the stadium setting. Lindsay, this is her first time in, a stadium for the U.S., in the U.S., I should say, for a championship series. So, that transition is scary in its own because she now has that, former world title presence in the lineup now. So she's a contender just to, be even looked at right there. So that alone is, something that she has to accustom herself, get used to and, really, bounce off of because, her skills competition, in my opinion, it hasn't been really, hot, but, she's been really good and consistent, but obviously she has time to improve in her, moonwalk game and, her, poppers and any other, moves that can get her a good enough positioning.
Yeah, I think one thing that needs to be pointed out is that the both of them, Kristen and Lindsay, both were usually going out relatively early in the skills competition because of their placement in racing. And usually with, just how judging goes in general, like there tends to be lower scores right off the bat. I think I want to say Lindsay Reed went out first for the skills competition, both events. And, that really does affect it because I believe it was Sunday, and during the Sunday event, Lindsay had a relatively solid skills run, but because she went out first, the fans who are the judges weren't going to throw out big numbers right off the bat because there's still 11 more athletes to go. So I think that has something to do with it, and I also think that going up against all these crazy names, and they've only really competed in arenas. They've had stadium appearances, but really, they stuck to arenas for, however many years. So I think, both of those elements that's definitely affecting their score. And I think that, they can definitely improve on what they're doing in the skills competition, but I definitely think that they're still doing well in the skills competition.
Yeah, I agree with what both of them said, but I want to bring another point is that it's the skills challenge. They have to choose between two-wheel skills maneuver or donut. And in the arenas where some of them are comfortable those are two separate competitions and they didn't have to choose. And I think comparing them two to Bari did, I believe, first show he did a skills, and then second time in the next show he did a donut. And it's just you got to find your little niche, and maybe that could be something that plays into it. Maybe they try something different instead of two skills. They try that donut, So it's just comfortability out there, and I think they're going to start to evolve as the season goes.
And Kristen kind of made her name for herself in the donut competition on the Triple Threat series. Usually drivers will turn left into their donuts. Kristen started turning into it right. And believe it or not, doing left-hand donuts is a little easier inside the Monster Jam trucks than doing right-hand donuts. That's why Kristen does it right-handed. She wants it to be a little bit more difficult. And she was doing that on the Triple Threat series. And I think that's a great point from Josh where they can try those different skills challenge moves. And we saw, I believe, Kristen and Lindsay both going for a reverse popper into a wheelie when, we have bicycles on that track. You have long walking slap wheelies. You have, more opportunities, more unique opportunities for moonwalks, specifically off of, the side step-up ramp or even like off one of the pods on the left side. You have multiple different opportunities that just hitting those kind of half arena pod jumps used for the racing turns down by the backflip ramp aren't really the only option on the track. And being a little bit more unique, a little bit more creative, I think they're going to skyrocket up the skills challenge leaderboard because we both know they can. And it's just a matter of getting that luck down and getting those tricks refined for a stadium competition, because at the end of the day, arenas are very different from stadiums, and crossing over is never easy for any athlete. And we move on to freestyle, where I think this was easily both of the events, our favorite freestyle competitions we have watched, maybe in the history of Austria. I think a couple World Finals outpower it, but man, we were watching them over Discord, and it was insane, both of the events. I think we all woke up our neighbors, both events. I think we really did. So looking at the freestyle average scores, they were all so close together. I mean, Tom Hentz was the only one to get up into the nines, 9.071. But you go down, Jim Kohler, Corey Rummel, Bryce Kenny, Todd LeDuc, Jamie Garner, Adam Anderson, and Ryan Anderson are all in the eights when it came to an average score. The next three, Bari Musauer, Lindsey Reed, Kristen Anderson, all in the sevens. It was only Colvinar at the bottom with a 6.420, who ended up getting underneath a 7, but so many close average scores, and that was how the scores were during the competitions as well. They were all so incredibly close. I mean, you look at event 1, we had 5 9s get thrown out from judgeszone.com. We also had 4 8s, we had 1 7, and then 3 6s. Nobody got under a 6.071. And looking at event 2, it was much of the same. It was only 1 9, but I'm looking at it, we had 8 8s. It was an insane freestyle competition. They were so close together all over the leaderboard. And we're gonna cover a couple storylines here in freestyle, but first we just need to discuss just overall thoughts on both of those freestyle competitions, because I personally do not think any of those athletes didn't hit a ramp at full throttle the entire weekend.
Oh, like the amount of like moments that came out of this weekend, it's really frowned upon because, leading into the first event, everyone is really skeptical on how the series is going to pan out and, what the drivers are really going to do. I mean, on Teardown, we explained, what, track they're going to do. We all knew that was going to be an element, to play in, some drivers' favors because some drivers are, more consistent on Chicago style per se than St. Louis style. So, now that it is St. Louis style, we're seeing, the more so, the drivers that are more comfortable in that style of racing pick up more wins, like Adam Anderson per se, so that alone, but like it's just crazy to me that the freestyle action that we got this weekend is scary to me because that's only the first 2 events. We still got however many left, and they're doing so many in a weekend. There's so much action to see. I can't wait to see what every driver does on this tour.
Yeah, I definitely think that Saturday afternoon's event was honestly just a big shock all around to just about everyone watching, everyone in the stands, because we knew that this lineup was going to give us some great shows, but I mean personally, I did not think it was going to be as high caliber as we got for really both events, and it just seemed like whoever was sent out first. They started out, they go pretty big, and then by the time we get to, third, fourth, we were seeing like big saves, huge air, huge launches and everything. And it was as if, we were seeing trucks that were going out, 9th, 10th, 11th in the lineup, going out 3rd or 4th when, freestyle really just started. That's why we saw all these super close scores because, everyone in the lineup just went so big for the entire weekend. And I think that just shows that, no one is backing down at all during this tour. First weekend is always a tough weekend because you don't know how your truck's going to react. You don't know how the track's going to be. We saw, a couple new elements on the track for freestyle specifically. But, I mean, no one was backing down to anything, really. So I think that, that just shows that, we're really in for it this season in freestyle specifically.
Yeah, I just think that the freestyle is probably, this weekend was probably the best that I've seen in a long time, dating back even a couple of years. This is probably one of my favorite shows that I've sat on whatever platform and watched with my friends. It was amazing. And I think that all attests to, honestly, that the drivers have so many days after the event inside that stadium where they can spend fixing their truck. Like I believe Corey was camped out and grilling after the show, fixing his truck. So I think that pulls off a little bit of the pressure and allows them to just send it and have fun and show that Monster Jam's here and we're coming back in full force.
Now we're going to get to the storylines we have from the freestyle competition. And first of all, it was Team Scream showing their strength in the freestyle competition. We know Team Scream's known for freestyle, but Jim Kohler and Corey Rummel, both events, laid down some amazing freestyles. A lot of people think Jim Kohler should have won on that first night. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out that way in the way of the scores, but no matter what, it was an amazing run. He had another amazing run on Sunday. 2 amazing saves that we weren't expecting to come out of Jim Kohler. And Corey Rummel's run, especially on Sunday where he got his first stadium freestyle win of his career, he was absolutely sending that truck sky high, keeping his momentum up as fast as he could that he's known for. Just an overall amazing weekend from Team Scream.
It's insane, just looking back at, all the highlights from, Corey and Jim. We already have 2. Well, let's put it this way. We already have an Extreme Air Award, between both of them, in my opinion. We already got, a Wow Factor Award between both of them and the Save of the Year Award between Kohler. So that alone just shows that Team Scream is here and they're here to, take some wins. They're here to not play around this year. This is the one tour that they're, focused on and they're on kill for. Corey, he's here to make a name for himself. Corey's been very consistent in years past, and it showed in Megalodon last year. He was taking names like Ryan Anderson and Neil Elliott out day in and day out, and I can't wait to see what they have in store for the next couple weekends.
Yeah, honestly, both of them, we obviously know that they're going to go big regardless of what the floor size is, what the track looks like, and who they're going up against. But, Jim Kohler, first, I want to say he went out relatively early on Saturday during Saturday's event, and he was just on point, with his 4th or 5th hit. He had that wild save that everyone was talking about. And honestly, it was just like, it almost felt like a new Jim Kohler. Like we always know that Jim is going to go big, but he went big so quickly. Like usually he leads up to his big hit of his freestyle. By the time he got to his 30-second mark in his freestyle time, he was already sending that thing. And, that's why a lot of people thought he should have won freestyle. And, with Corey on Sunday, his momentum was absolutely insane. And, it was insane as well on Saturday, along with a lot of other athletes. But, Corey had 2 great runs across the weekend, and Jim had 2 of the craziest saves he's probably ever had, at least in recent time. So, Team Scream is obviously ready to go for this tour.
Hey, man, they're named Team Scream for a reason. They did not let their foot off that loud pedal all weekend at all. And it definitely showed in freestyle. And I believe putting Corey and Jim together where they haven't been in years past is what both of them just needed. Like I said, also, it helps that, like I said before, that they're stuck in that same kind of area for the next 3 weekends. So they're able to, like I said, hang out and grill and work on their trucks and hang out and act like it's back in the old days where everybody's just chilling, just out in the back after the show. And that camaraderie, Jim is what, 15, 20 plus years in, whatever it is at this point, nearly 30. And he's like Tom. He's got not much left to prove. He's got 2 freestyle titles. He's just out there having fun. And I think that's the best version of Jim Kohler. I think years past he's tried a little too hard to be like, I'm here making a name for myself. Once he decided, hey, I'm going to have some fun, Jim Kohler showed up and showed out. And that definitely showed this weekend with them crazy crashes and saves. And then Corey, on the other hand, his partner in crime, just up-and-coming star and is just killing it, and he took home his first stadium victory. And being a Michigan boy, I'm proud of that team. It was awesome to watch.
We move on to another storyline in the BKT Tires freestyle competition, and that is Kristen Anderson showing some potential in stadium freestyle. She already showed it a little bit off in Arlington, but coming into a stadium series, you got to see how she did with series points on the line. In night 1, she had some issues with, I believe it was electrical issues that unfortunately knocked her out of the freestyle competition. But while she was able to run, she was really showing off her big air that she was known for. She is the world record holder for the highest ramp jump in a Monster Jam truck after all. And then on day 2, in the second event of the weekend, she showed off and she got an 8.919, ended up second behind Corey Rummel in the freestyle competition on Sunday. And Kristen Anderson had an amazing save off of her first jump that, I'll be honest, I don't think anyone really expected her to get that truck to rotate back around and save it. She flopped over on the back, and usually when those trucks get up on the front, sometimes they don't really want to get the power down that much. Just the engine just lags too much with it being stuck up there. But then she got a hold of it. She got the tires on the ground, slammed the gas, and got it back on all 4 tires, and then kept going. That just shows the potential, I think, from Kristen Anderson that we all knew she had. Now she's seeing it, and the rest of the fans are seeing it as well. We could see a brand new Kristen Anderson coming out next week.
I feel like right now is the time where Kristen is breaking out of her shell. She has 2 of her older brothers on tour with her to really help her, come into her own, really. And, representing Gravedigger is, not an easy task. And especially when you're an Anderson, like that being the first female Anderson that is driving Gravedigger. So that's a lot of pressure just, alone on her. So, I mean, the fans even add a lot of pressure on her because, they have to, they critique her performances based on what she does, so coming into Houston, she wanted to do something a lot different than what she did in Arlington. In Arlington, I felt like she played it safe. She wanted to ride out the clock, but it didn't really work out in her favor. And unfortunately, that really, put a damper on her mood, in my opinion. And coming into Salt Lake, it was her, battlegrounds per se, her setting. She got to collect her bearings a little bit, carry some momentum going into Houston, or at least per se, I should say, they thought were San Antonio, and then that, unfortunately got delayed. And then going into Houston, she had a lot, an extra week or so to think about what she wanted to do for the fans, and she showed down. And, I feel like if, the mechanical gremlins and, the truck gremlins just really, went away, and, she really just turned that switch off in her mind to where she doesn't drive with her head and more with their heart, we could see a Kristen Anderson that nobody has ever seen, and is going to be very frightening.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this last week, but Kristen has been very vocal about how, she feels very nervous about, being behind Gravedigger, the first time that she's on a stadium tour. I know she was talking about it in Arlington during her interviews. And, I think that, her run on Sunday may have really helped her confidence because, any athlete who goes out and gets a save within their first 10 seconds of their run, that's just going to build their confidence right off the bat for the rest of their freestyle and going forward. And I think that, her finally, I want to say she had a full run there. And I think that, her finally being able to have a full run, have a big run, and get second place that night, I think is really going to help her going forward. I think she really needed that, honestly, because, she's somewhat struggled in Arlington. She had a couple cool moves in the skills competition. Houston overall, she had a relatively solid weekend, but that freestyle I think really is going to be what flips the switch for Kristen Anderson. And I think that going into this weekend and next weekend and the other Florida shows, I think that we're going to see a whole new Kristen Anderson coming up.
I mean, she is an Anderson for a reason. She showed her potential in Arlington. And, unfortunately, show 1, Saturday, she had that mechanical problem or that electrical issue where she was still having some pretty good moves, but the truck didn't really want to work in her favor. And then Sunday, you come to Sunday, she fought more mechanical failures that right before freestyle. I believe her freestyle got delayed because in 2-wheel she blew a front end and a rear end, and they were thrashing on that truck. And she came out and she had an amazing run through down and just showed why she should be in Gravedigger and what the season is to hold with Kristen.
And the last storyline of the freestyle competition is Bryce Kenny being really consistent when it came to the BKT Tires freestyle competition. I mean, he had an average score of an 8.832. And some of the best freestyles we've seen from Bryce Kenny in a while. I mean, another one of those drivers who seemed like every time he hit a ramp, he cleared whatever landing ramp there was on the other side. And an amazing save as well that he pulled off. So I believe he pulled off a Monster Energy backflip as well. It was a great weekend overall from Bryce Kenny. And again, like Kristen Anderson, we're seeing that potential back from Bryce Kenny. And we already knew he had it. We've seen it before, but he hasn't been able to put it all together for his Stadium Championship Series. I think this might be the year for Bryce Kenny.
It is funny you bring up Kristen, when you kind of, decipher between Bryce and her, they both have experience in the arena setting. But, Kristen has more experience in the arenas than she does stadiums, and Bryce has more stadiums than she does arenas. or he does arenas, I should say. And, Bryce, in that aspect, it really took a lot of time for him to get comfortable because, he had to get used to a whole new name in Great Clips Mohawk Warrior. He's bringing in that Great Clips sponsorship with Monster Jam. And that's not an easy task in its own because you have to uphold the Great Clips name and the Mohawk Warrior name and impress the Monster Jam fans. In his second season, that's not an easy task at all. So for Bryce, in his, now I believe 5th season behind the wheel, you're starting to see the traits that, what we've seen in him from years past. We just, weren't sure if he was, in that, mindset per se as a driver yet. So now that we're seeing Bryce get more and more comfortable behind the wheel, we're seeing a lot, killer freestyles and a lot of better skills runs. We already knew he was consistent in racing. Freestyle, he's picked it up a lot, and he went through a chassis or two this weekend. So I don't know, maybe we can see more chassis get broken. I don't want to see that, but Bryce, whatever he has to do to win, he'll do it.
Yeah, I think overall Bryce Kenny was one of the more consistent drivers of the entire weekend. You look back at Arlington, he got second place in the overall event standings twice behind Tom Meents. I believe both of the events he was just 1 point behind. And he won two competitions there on the final show on Sunday in Arlington. And coming into Houston, he didn't walk away with any wins, but in the skills competition specifically, he was doing very well with the moonwalks he was doing. And freestyle, he had a great freestyle on Saturday. I believe he held the lead for a bit as well after he backflipped. And, on Sunday, I don't think his run lasted too long, but he had that wild save that definitely put him up there in the score. And, I think overall Bryce had a super consistent weekend, really up there with as consistent as Tom Meents and, Corey Rummel and all these names we've been talking about. And I think that, if Bryce can keep the consistency up, especially with this tour and having to, keep that up constantly, really, I think that he's got a good shot at, moving up in points and even, trying to take out Tom Meents here.
Like he said, Bryce is sitting 3rd overall in points. Had a pretty overall great weekend. He's sitting pretty high in the averages in freestyle as well, and it's showing. He put his chassis out there on the line as we saw. He went through a couple of them. I think we're gonna get into that a little bit later on, but that just proves how much he is evolving in the sport and why he's evolving in freestyle. He's just so good behind the wheel, and that showed this weekend. And I think he's going to be able to overcome some bit of hit or miss that he was on before, and I think this season's going to go well for him.
And we're going to actually cycle back right to Bryce Kenny using a different chassis, because there's a lot of athletes who, middle of a weekend, you give them a new chassis. And this chassis was off of the BKT Tires truck, which was just there in Houston as a display truck at the pit party, just for people to look at, not to be driven. Suddenly, it's being put a Great Clips Mohawk Warrior body onto it, Bryce Kenny's seat put into it, and now he has to go out and drive in an event for points, not just overall points, but for series points, behind the wheel of a chassis that not only has he never driven, but I don't think anybody has ever driven, at least for a long time, that was really only meant to be used for display purposes that weekend. Talk about a monumental task that you give a lot of the driver athletes on the track. They're going to struggle.
It's really good that they have, the sense of fleet trucks per se, because, they can easily, put drivers, seats in different chassis, and they can easily run the trucks like, as their own. And, fortunately enough, Bryce, he had that, spare chassis in the back, be able to use, so, he can get back in the competition and stay up in the top in the points. So Bryce, he's no easy task regardless of what truck you put him in. And, now that I could say that Bryce is a contender for this, championship series, overall in the end, when that culminates, whenever that is, Bryce has been very consistent, and in a chassis that he's never driven before, and I don't think, our driver has in a while, he showed out and did even better than I expected. So, that goes to show that Bryce is a contender no matter what.
Yeah, I feel like, at this point, Bryce has shown that he can, obviously a lot of us know Bryce is, the guy who breaks a lot of stuff on his truck. He's been in a ton of, wild wrecks in racing, skills and freestyle, really. And, and I believe, I want to say he's jumped into different trucks before at some point, because he's had multiple wrecks where, he's taken out the entire front end. I remember in Anaheim up against Adam, first weekend out, and he wrecks, I believe, in round 2 of the semifinals. And, I think that, him jumping into a whole different chassis, probably a last second decision there where, they knew they weren't going to be able to put him in his normal chassis, jumping in a whole different truck and doing really well for something like that and getting a great save in freestyle, I think just shows how, how he can just jump into really any situation and do just as well.
I'm going to toss a little bit of a rumor out there. I believe the chassis that the BKT the BKT body was on was actually the Crusader chassis. So jumping into Lindsey Wink's truck, Lindsey takes care of all those parts usually. So it wasn't that much of a transition. Obviously, Lindsey and him are kind of similar in build per se. Lindsey's a little bit heftier, but those chassis are able to seats are be able to easily interchangeable. So, it is definitely good on Bryce that he was able to adapt and overcome being put into a chassis that he's never been in before. But, Bryce is definitely amazing at driving, and he showed why. And, he also tossed another dent on that chassis too. So, Bryce is only going up from here.
Well, we went over all the competitions for the weekend and the series standings. Now it's time for our top 5 moments from the weekend, and we're starting with number 5. Ryan Anderson and Todd LeDuc, round number 1 of racing in Houston Event 2. Both of them coming across the line. Todd LeDuc almost flipped in the turn. He got it saved, but Ryan Anderson ended up flipping, coming across the line, and didn't come back.
That was a scare and a half, if I had to say. From watching in this, the stands perspective, from whatever we could scrap up video-wise, it wasn't a crash that I wanted to see if it did go wrong. That could have ended up pretty badly, but fortunately enough, Ryan was able to skate out of it. He did crash in the end, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been between the both of them. So fortunately, LeDuc was able to put it down in a predicament like that. That goes to show that these athletes are well trained at what they do. They're good at what they do, and that was just an insane race. And that to lead off the event it's just a momentum factor that you just want to carry out through the rest of the event.
Yeah, I mean, for the fact that it was the first race of the day, it was, really surprising to see. And, obviously the crash was, up there recently with one of the more wild racing crashes that we've seen in a while. And, it was like from different angles that I've seen of it, it was very close, for the two trucks to collide. And, I think that, luckily there was no collision, but obviously Ryan crashed and he couldn't make it back to racing. But yeah, and that kind of led on for the rest of racing that afternoon, where a lot of drivers rolled over, a lot of drivers messed up that final turn, and I think that sadly that crash at the beginning ended up showing how racing was really going to go for a lot of athletes.
I think it was a wow moment of the weekend. I think it's arguably race of the year so far, just in wow moment perspective. You're not expecting something like that to happen in racing, but it did. And at first I didn't think Todd had clipped Ryan, but further view, he definitely touched him. And props to Todd to be able to save the truck. And, Ryan ended up rolling over. But like I said, definitely possibly race of the year.
Moving on to moment number 4 from the weekend. Kristen Anderson in Gravedigger had an amazing save in Event 2 Freestyle. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but now just looking back at it again. The saves are not easy to do, especially in that scenario where it's up on those front tires, still kind of clipping the hood. You need to just get those tires on the ground and get it back over. Kristen did an awesome job at doing that.
Oh, she did a very fantastic job. She's a rookie in, the eyes of a stadium, driver, athlete per se. So to come out from the arena environment and show up some of these stadium drivers is pretty cool to see. And, especially for Kristen, she had arguably probably the best start to a run that I've seen her have in stadium so far. If she kept the momentum up the way that she had it, she could have won easily, but the truck just didn't want to, pan out the way that she wanted to.
Yeah, the save was definitely, incredible, especially to see, we were just talking about how the first race we saw the wild crash, and, the first hit of Kristen's freestyle, we get a wild save. And, I think that, she's had many saves in arenas, but I think that this one definitely going to stand out to her just because, even in All-Star, she had that wild save in Las Vegas a couple of years back at this point, and that, like we were saying, that save I think really is going to switch her, skills and everything, and I think that going forward, I think we're going to see a lot more of those saves coming from Kristen.
Just watching it back right now a little bit, she hit her first jump, and then that second hit, she got a weird rebound, and it tossed her over, and she just had the presence in mind to hit the throttle and bring it back. Definitely was a highlight of the weekend, and it's just amazing to watch Kristen get her potential and just skyrocket and have an amazing run.
Moving on to moment number 3 from the weekend, it was Lindsay Reed in Houston Event 2. A wicked crash in freestyle, getting a sky wheelie coming off of the pod, hits the ground, which breaks 2 forelinks, and then I believe she tried to hit the throttle coming off of that and completely blew the rear drive shaft out of it. I mean, an insane crash, and sometimes, we of course want to see the athletes come out safe, which due to the safety in Monster Jam, almost always when there's a bad crash, driver athletes come out safe. That is what the trucks are designed to do. And we don't really want to see the trucks break so early in freestyles, but sometimes just these wicked crashes are very awesome to see, and it becomes a wow moment later on.
Oh yeah, they're cool to see, and they're very unpredictable. But at the same time, Lindsay, she had a very, great performance that, entire weekend. Obviously, the truck didn't cooperate in her favor. She had to, work around some gremlins, but she made the best out of it. And I think she really, showed that these, these fans that she's here to play. She's here to, play, and she's not here to mess around either.
Yeah, I mean, the crash was honestly a very strange crash because she got a great skywheel off of that ramp, but I wasn't really expecting it to rip out the entire rear end, really. So, it was definitely super cool to see. I'm sure, the crew guys are not too happy about it, but, they'll have that fixed for this coming weekend.
She's just proven why she's a world champ. She sent it off a jump at pretty high speeds, actually. She got some pretty big air off the ramp and just landed pretty awkwardly. And Lexi Warner, I believe her crew chief, probably wasn't too happy, but, okay with it being I'm pretty sure it was show 2, and they have all that time to fix those trucks. So she was going for the win, and unfortunately something happened, but it created for an amazing wow moment, and probably again another one of them things that we're gonna be talking about all year long.
Moving on to moment number 2 from the weekend, it was Independence shining in freestyle. Whether it was Jim Cole or Corey Rummel or Jamie Garner, those 3 were really shining in the freestyle competition. Colvinard having some struggles this weekend, but we'll see if he can bounce back coming up in Houston 3 and 4 this weekend. But Garner, Kohler, Rummel, those 3 really were strong this entire weekend in freestyle.
Kohler arguably had probably the better runs out of, both of them in the sense of, both shows. But, all of them around, they did amazing. They had the best runs, best momentum I've seen out of all of them in Monster Jam shows, at least. So, props to them. I hope they carry out that momentum for the rest of the year. And I can't wait to see what they have in store.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, Jamie Garner really surprised me in freestyle and also in his skills. He went out for freestyle on Saturday night, I should say, and Sunday afternoon, and he was, getting some of the best air of anyone. He had some of the best momentum, and it was like, Jamie's always been great at freestyle. He had a great season in 2020, but this freestyle was almost like another level for Jamie, and I think that, he's going to keep if he's going to keep this up, that has a really good shot at some of these freestyle wins.
All I'm going to say is that the Indies definitely killed it this weekend. They shined well, and I believe they're going to definitely, all of them, hopefully, and Cole are going to kick it up even a little bit more heading into this weekend. And back to it, we're talking about Jim Kohler sitting second in overall or in freestyle averages. You got Corey sitting in, I believe, third, and Jamie sitting in fifth. So these guys didn't come to play. I mean, they came to play, but they didn't come to back down. Is what I was trying to say. But they came here to show up and show out, and that's what they did. And I definitely see it continuing on as the season goes.
And our top moment from the weekend of Houston 1 and 2, the freestyle competition as a whole. And we previewed this before we got to our top 5 moments, and just the amount of wow moments we got out of the freestyle competition, the amount of air we saw, the amount of just amazing moves that we saw from these athletes. It was a weekend for the history books, and if this is setting the tone for the rest of the Stadium Championship Series, we could very well see some freestyles of the decade and of the century coming up here very soon.
Most definitely. There is at least a moment from each of these driver athletes that they had from the weekend. So there is at least something that we can say and talk about them here on the show. So fortunately enough, I can't wait to see what the season progresses to do. So, I mean, I'm just excited. I don't know what else to say, really.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about, specifically the Saturday night event. I think, that event, in my opinion, is one of the greatest freestyle competitions we've seen in years. I think back to different shows in 2017 that, where it was up to that par, and, like Josh was just saying, like, if this is what we're going to be seeing every weekend, then we're looking at, not even just freestyle competition for the history books, but an entire tour for the history books.
No, I agree with both of them. I'm just excited, man. Those freestyle competitions were wild. We had every run. It seemed like nobody was lifting. Every jump that they came up to, there was almost full throttle, and they were just sending it over everything. Everybody had some crazy momentum, and it's just I'm just scared of what's gonna happen, man. That's all I can really say. It's just wild.
And now we move on to Fire or Ice, which is our version of Hot or Not, where we're going to throw out an athlete and say, do we think they're on fire, they're dominating, they're doing what they need to do to be a threat for the series championship, or if they're on ice, if they're a little bit, off their game right now, need to get back on, need to do a few things to make sure that they are in the hunt for an overall and a series championship. We start with Jim Kohler, who had some great freestyles, but his racing wasn't the best from the weekend. He had some wow moments in skills, but overall not the best skills weekend, a 5.979 average. Do you guys think he's fire or ice right now off of week number 1?
It's very hard to say right now. I want to say he's between 50-50, honestly. I can't really say he's fire or ice, realistically, because Jim, in past first quarters, he's been relatively good in terms of where he's placed. He's picked up an overall in 2019. He won freestyle last year, and this year he's had some solid freestyle runs. Unfortunately, he hasn't picked up any wins yet, but that just goes to show that Jim is here, and he's not here, or he's here not to not mess around. And we saw earlier on Instagram that he has a fire body for Avengers. So if he's going to be running different schemes, I don't think he's going to be worried about bodies. He's just going to be more so worried about that truck and if it's running at 100%.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with Josh to say that he's about 50-50, because obviously, both of his freestyles were, some of his best that we've seen in the last couple of years. But, in racing skills, we didn't see too much from him, if I'm being completely honest. And, we've seen before that Jim can do great in racing. I want to say he got to the finals in Houston last year against, I forget who he went up against there, but, he can race, and, he's done great in skills before. So I think that if he can just improve on those two competitions and, keep that momentum from freestyle, which we all fully expect he's going to do, then, I think we'll be saying, in a week from now or 2 weeks from now that, he's going to be on fire.
I definitely think he's going to be on fire. I think he is fire right now, because Jim showed some potential in racing. He wasn't slow by any means. He had them corners down. He was pretty solid. Two-wheel skills, he put down some pretty solid two-wheel skills maneuvers. And then freestyle, he let out and showed up and showed out. So I definitely think he's hot. And I think he's only going to get hotter as the year goes on, as long as he can get them consistent racing and skills down. But, yeah, definitely fire going into this weekend.
All right, so we talked about Jim Kohler being sort of a mix of fire or ice. What about Kristen Anderson? Because, she showed some potential in racing. I believe, her brother wrecked, but she beat Ryan Anderson in the racing competition, technically. And she had a good day, a racing record of 1 and 2. So that was that one win against Ryan Anderson, which getting a win against Ryan Anderson in any capacity is a grounds for celebration from an athlete. But she showed she was a little slow in the skills challenge to start out. We talked about that earlier. She has more potential there. But in the freestyle competition, definitely on a day 2, she showed that she is there to play. Do you think she's on the fire side or the ice side right now, or is she more in the middle like so Jim is as well?
It's really hard to really, pinpoint right now, because, again, the truck has, had its failing points throughout the weekend. So it wasn't mainly on her side of things. But at the same time, we can't really, downplay that as an issue. So in all reality, she is pretty in the middle. Her driving is there. I just feel like she has to put it all together. She's not fully comfortable in the stadium setting yet. But once she is, I feel like she's going to be on fire and she's going to be one to look out for.
I'm honestly going to say that, with how we've seen that she can go out there and, be as good as anyone else in this lineup, that she is on fire only for the fact that, like we were saying, I think we mentioned a couple of times that save and that run on Sunday, I think is going to only bring her confidence up. And I think that's been the main thing with Kristen, where, she's nervous going into these bigger events. And I think that because she got over that bump there and she was able to put down a great freestyle on Sunday, I think that she is on fire going into this weekend, because I think she has that momentum and that confidence coming from Sunday. So I think that, especially going into this weekend, I think she's going to be, she's going to be on fire.
I agree with both what they said, but I would just want to say I think she's not fire or ice. I think she's heating up. I think she's heating up for sure, and I think she's gonna, like they said, progress as the season goes. But definitely that she's riding high confidence coming out of Sunday's show 2 and heading into this weekend. So I'm definitely gonna say she's heating up.
We'll move on to Todd LeDuc, who, albeit struggled, unlike Todd LeDuc usually does in the racing competition. He didn't win a single race this weekend, and he had 2 opportunities to on Sunday when he came back after Ryan Anderson couldn't make it into round number 2. Looking at his stats, they're all over the board. 7.384 in skills. He was definitely on the back half of the skills average, and freestyle average he was 5th with an 8.672. Not the best averages, but also not terrible. Just a very middle of the road in terms of the judged competitions for Todd LeDuc. But on the soft side, when it came to the racing competition, do you think he's fire or ice compared to what we usually see from Todd LeDuc here in the championship series?
He's definitely ice at the start of the season. Todd, he's known to pick it up more towards the end of things because, the competition's stiff on this tour. So you got to really be on your A game here. Like I said, and, earlier on, I think the tires are really the part that's really affecting him. He said before that last year, I believe that Bryce had a, thicker tread than the Gen 2s that he was running before. And, it's transitioning to a tread that's a lot thicker is going to, cause a lot more bite from the dirt. So it's going to be, it's definitely a game plan that's going to be hard for Todd to really adjust to, but I'm pretty sure once he nails that down, he's going to be on fire.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree that Todd is, on ice right now, just because, he had a relatively rough weekend compared to what we usually see from Todd. Of course, he got that freestyle one on Saturday, but, I think racing, for me at least, is what makes me want to put him on ice, because, he didn't win any races that he was in. He was able to come back after Ryan's wreck, and he still could not get that win. And I think that that plays a super important role in getting all these points. So I think that as of right now, Todd LeDuc is on ice, but I think that if he can pick up specifically his racing game, I think that we'll be saying next week that he's on fire.
I mean, I can't say he's fire or ice. I want to say he's cold. I think it's too early in the season to judge based on this one event, because everybody has an off show. Everybody has an off show, no matter who it is. And I think that could have been just Todd. And I think he's cold. I'm not going to give him the ice, because I think definitely he's going to heat up. He's definitely going to heat up. It's Todd LeDuc. Everybody knows that he's an amazing driver. So hopefully he's looking to turn it around this weekend, and he's definitely going to start to heat up.
Todd did get a freestyle win on Saturday night. The Sunday afternoon freestyle winner was Corey Rummel, and that's what we're going to talk about next here on Fire or Ice. Because, again, looking at his racing stats, he was also 0-2, and I think he really tried to bring that strategy that he brought into the figure 8 racing, which was really pin the loud pedal down and just try and steer, drifting through the corners. Didn't really seem to work on the St. Louis style track, and struggles in the skills challenge too. A 5.629 average. He was only one of two other athletes who got down into the 5s, and that was Cole Vernard and Jim Kohler in the skills challenge. But obviously excelling day 2 in freestyle. He excelled day 1 in freestyle as well. He was up there on the leaderboard, 8th to be exact, but 8th with an 8.186, which is nothing to laugh about there. So do you guys think Corey Rummel's on the Fire or Ice side? Again, it feels like all these athletes are kind of landing somewhere in the middle, maybe a little bit of leeway to one side.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be leeway between all of them. But for Corey's sake, I'm going to say he's warm for now, and he's going to get pretty hot and possibly fire. You know, Corey, I think that freestyle win gave him a confidence boost heading into this weekend. We already know Corey has some great equipment, you know, backing him. You know, that alone just goes to show that Team Scream is, you know, the top of the line in chassis fabrication. You know, Corey's got probably one of the more, you know, toughest chassis in the industry. So that alone goes to show that he can throw down the best runs. And, you know, he picked up a win. So I'm going to say he's warm for now, and that's only going to continue to get better.
Yeah, I kind of think he's where you know, his teammate Jim Kohler is at this point, where he's kind of just like in that middle, because obviously, you know, between the two of them, arguably they had, you know, the best freestyles of the entire weekend when you think about those two events. And, you know, his racing and skills game, I want to say he had a really solid skills run on Sunday. I want to say he had a really good run, but you know, the points didn't pan out there. And racing, you know, it's so tough in racing. You know, we've talked about Adam before dominating, and, you know, Metz as well. And I think that, you know, for now, he's kind of like in that middle point, because he's doing great in one competition, but not so great in the other two. And I feel like, you know, you have to be doing good in really at least 2, if not all 3, to really, you know, keep the points up. So I think for now he's right in the middle, but, you know, Corey Rummel, as we've seen, can pick it up in racing and pick it up in skills.
See, I'm going to say he's fire here. Reason being is that in sports, confidence is always key. And he got his first stadium win this weekend. And we all know he has the talent and the equipment to go through and get any win in any competition. And I think it all comes down to confidence. He finally got that win. He finally got that monkey off his back. And I think he's definitely going to be the dark horse that I said he was going to be all season. So for that reason, I'm going to say he's fire heading into this weekend.
Well, there was so much to cover from the weekend. I still think there's some small stuff we're missing here and there, but we're reaching the time limit on this episode. I tried to keep a time limit around 45 minutes when the show first started, and last week we blew that out of the water, so I decided, you know, hour 15, hour and a half. If we get through everything, we get through everything, and I feel like we've gotten through all the major stuff, so now it's time to pivot over to this weekend. Houston 3 and 4 are coming up. Who do you guys think is going to be dominant? Who do you think is going to continue to be consistent? Who do you think is going to get those overall event championships? Just throw out your predictions for the weekend. I'm excited to hear them.
You know, honestly, in my gut feel, I feel like this is going to be the weekend that we're going to see a lot of oddballs taking advantage of, you know, the more experienced, you know, athletes behind the wheel. So in my personal opinion, I think Barry's going to shine in the racing competition. He already laid down the fastest lap heading into Saturday's event. So, you know, that alone goes to show that Barry is very consistent in racing. I just feel like if he has to, you know, once he nails down that last corner and, you know, in a round that really matters, Barry is going to be unbeatable.
Yeah, you know, when you asked the question, the first name that came to mind was Kristen Anderson. I think that, you know, she's, you know, we talked about, I want to say last week, that it's only a matter of time before she's grabbing freestyle wins and, you know, different competition wins across the board. And, you know, I think that since she finally got that good freestyle in, she got second place on Sunday, you know, I think that she's going to be the one to watch this weekend. I also, you know, think that Lindsay Reed, after, you know, just being able to, you know, have her first, really in a long time at least, her first 2 stadium shows, you know, under her belt, and she did, you know, very well as well. So I think that between the both of them, I think that, you know, there's definitely a good shot they're going to be improving their point standings and improving their overall just competition standings.
I'm going to piggyback off of what Josh said. I think there's definitely going to be a lot of oddball like winners. But unfortunately for the field, going back to it, I think Tom Mintz is going to be on fire. He's going to be consistent. He's going to stay at the top of every competition. He's just out there having fun. He's got nothing left to prove. And I think that's a scary Tom Mintz. And I think he's probably going to be another one to watch this weekend. The person to beat. I mean, he's leading points. He's the top of averages, and he's got one win. I think he's going to trickle in some wins throughout the season, but I think heading into this weekend, Tom Mintz is the man beat.
Some great predictions from our analysts for the weekend, and I'm honestly going to piggyback on what Josh said. I think it's going to be the weekend of Tom Mintz. I think we're going to see Tom finally get his racing wins. He's going to beat Adam Anderson in the racing final. He's going to continue to be consistent in the skills challenge, and I think we're going to see a Glendale 2019 type freestyle, just some insane stuff from Tom Mintz in Max D Fire to grab a couple, maybe even one or two freestyle competition victories. That's going to do it for us here on the Monster Jam Teardown. Make sure you tune in next week when we recover all the action from Houston 3 and 4 and look ahead to the final weekend of action, Houston 5, 6, and 7. And then join us each week as we discuss the previous weekend of action and look forward to the next weekend of action on the Monster Jam Stadium Championship Series. For Josh Gajewski, Joshua Tavares, Danny McGinley, I am Joshua Lee. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope to see you again. This is Monster Jam.